now I'm going to make the wire frame for my sunflower that I'm going to do. This is my freeform, so I've already made my freeform piece that I want to put on the wire hoop. I do most of the detailed work beforehand before I put it on the hoop. Once I'm ready to put my work on the hoop, I take my wire. I like to take my wire double because it's not a very thick wire, it's not very strong, so it bends quite easily, and I don't want it to bend too easily, but I don't want something too thick that I can't work with it and that I battle. So now you're going to basically measure the size of the hoop that you want. So I don't want this hoop to be too big. This is quite a small little one that we're making. So my sunflower is not going to be smack bang in the middle of the circle. It's going to sort of be to the side, and then I'm going to use blue chain stitches to blue chain stitches to attach it to the hoop on the petals. So once you've taken your wire and measured the size of the hoop that you'd like, you're just going to close the hoop. So to close the hoop, I just sort of bend over the ends. So I've basically got two hooks. If you have a look, you'll see I've got two hooks like that. You don't want it to be too thick and stick out, otherwise it could show on the end product. Don't worry if the two hoops are loose. We're going to, when we start attaching the chain stitches, we're going to pull the whole thing together, and you're basically going to be crocheting over both wires to bind it and bring it together. Then when I attach my freeform, what I do is I take the thickest part of the hoop, and I'll usually take the thickest part of my work where it won't be the most obvious, where you won't see it as bad, and I'll sort of work that over the thickest piece so that I have a nice clean line for the outside, which will be more visible to the eye. Right, so I have roughly attached the bottom part of my freeform, the thickest part of my freeform, to the thickest part of my wire where my wire was joined, in order to conceal the joint, so that I have a nice smooth edge around the outside, which I'll be crocheting over at a later stage. It doesn't have to be the fanciest work you've ever done. Nobody is going to be judging you. This is art. So now that this is attached, I basically just, sewed around it. So now that this part is attached, I have this floppy piece in the middle, and I need to anchor it onto the other side of the hoop so that it doesn't shift around. So basically what we're going to be doing is chain stitches, and we're going to attach it to our first petal. I like to come over the middle of the hoop in the beginning, just to ensure that I'm not working too much to the one side or to the other side. I do not want to take it from the tip of my petal, because then my petal is going to be flat. With this particular piece, I would like my petals to curl over at the top, so I'm going to attach it a little further down on the petal. It doesn't necessarily matter which stitch you hook it into, just as long as it's not showing at the front of your petal. So we're basically going to attach it with a slip stitch. My hook is a bit thick. Alright, and then we're going to chain until we have a long enough chain to get to the other side of the hoop. You don't want to pull your work too tight, so you shouldn't have a too short chain. Alright, as you can see here, I need at least another 2 or 3 chains. So let's do 3 chains. There we are. Then it's not too tight and it's just sort of pulling it nicely, and I'm sort of in the middle of my hoop here. This is the trickiest part you'll have to maneuver, and this is basically attaching it to the hoop. So whichever way is easiest for you, I come through and then I do just a single crochet, and you're basically going to tie it off and clip and pull. Alright, so now you'll see this piece is quite loose, it's kind of flopping around. You don't want that because it's going to shift while you're doing your other anchors, which is not a good thing because your whole thing is going to pull skew. So usually what I do at this stage of the game is I take a little bit of super glue. It doesn't matter what super glue you use. You can even use nail glue for acrylic nails. It's not permanent, it's basically just going to anchor it so that you can finish your piece of work. I like to take this little end that I've got left over and I like to wrap that around nice and tight just to make sure it is in place. Right, so super glue dries nice and quickly, so it won't be long before you're on your next anchor. Alright, so this one is in place, it's nice and stuck now. You're not going to do the one next to it because the whole thing can pull skew. So basically you're going to, like a pizza, you're going to be doing, say, the second one and the third one also with chain stitches. So you're just going to go straight out with chain stitches eventually with all your petals until you have all your petals anchored. Right, so we are back. I have now anchored and chained and secured all the petals just with one chain all around the hoop, and secured each end with some super glue to make sure they don't shift and they don't move around. You can now, if you want, I personally like the straight lines, so with this piece I'm not going to be doing any more interwebbing, but if you would like to interweb, you're basically just going to chain further. You can either make a pattern with your chains or you can do just random. So if you're going to random chain in between, it's pretty much going to go like this. So you're going to chain stitch and sort of take it up to, say, there. It's basically about personal choice, and then you're going to slip stitch into the other chain. And then we're going to make another chain. And we can either go up towards the hoop and we attach it to the hoop, or we can start to go down and attach to another chain, say, oh dear, you can lose your stitches too, that would also be fun. You can go down to another chain and lose your stitches again. Pop it in any chain space, it doesn't matter. This is random, so it's basically according to your preference and what looks nice for you. And you can basically take it up to the top again. So that's how you would make sort of a random webbing, and then afterwards you'll work this thread into this chain just so that you can work it away and it's not in the way. But I'm not going to be doing that. I like the way the lines look with the petals. It just gives me a nice, it draws the eye. I think it's very nice. So I'm now going to start with the outside of the hoop, and this is a very thick wool that I have from a different project which I'm going to be using. You don't have to use such a thick wool. You can use any wool you want, any color, it doesn't really matter. Again, this is art, it's freeform, free for all. Okay, so you're going to go to the first place where your hoop is visible on the front side. all my petals have been secured. You'll see these petals where there was not room for a chain. I just basically added a little piece of wool and attached them on the larger petals. I've decided to let these ones hang out. I think it looks fun and it looks cheerful. I've basically just sewn it onto the hoop. So now the edges that are sticking out is what we need to cover, because at the end of the project we don't want to see any wool. So because it's such a thick wool, I'm only going to be doing single crochets around the edge. Again, it's not a set number of stitches that you're going to be doing. You're basically going to work, and as you go along you're going to see how many stitches you need. Maybe you need a bit less, maybe you need a bit more. Alright, so here that's enough to fill it. So basically this is where my petal has been tied. I'm now going to skip over that, and I'm going to take the ends of the other strings and I'm going to work over them. So basically you're working away the strings as you go around the hoop, which is going to tidy it up, which means you don't have to come around afterwards and still have to work away ends. Right, so then you'll see I make my next join. So I'm basically just going to skip over it. I'm going to make sure I've still got my ends, and I'm just going to keep going all the way around my hoop until I have completely covered all the wire and there is no more wire visible. And that is basically how it's going to look. And then afterwards you're obviously going to pull your little pick up straight there, and that's the effect that you're going to have.